So the interesting thing is we are a really small team, but there are pros and cons as well. But the advantage is we can make decisions rather quickly. And obviously the disadvantage is we have limited resources. So a lot of times we need to like cross roles and do various things. But basically we are a team of very passionate people who love making music, who love playing synthesizers, musical gears. So my background is I'm a music producer and DJ, and I love vintage synths and modern synths, and like I love getting inspirations from the stories and background behind the instruments, and all of these experiences like build up over the years and influence how I like when I make decisions in creating instruments. And of course, Glenn, our CEO, he gives great direction, and he really has the insight and vision. And it's great that we are all passionate in making those instruments, and a lot of times we are like really aligned, so we can make decisions quickly. Well, but of course we are like restrained in the reality. But I'm still glad that the instruments we delivered are pretty like amazing, at least in my perspective as a user.
Yeah.
So for the Leviasynth, it is a project that like started after the Hydrosynth. Like well, Glenn played FM synthesis back in the 80s. He loved digital and FM synthesizers. But the thing about Leviathan is doing FM is how you can make the UI to be really intuitive, to really break that barrier. Because like back then we have great FM synthesizers that can play well, you can perform them. But if you want to really get into sound design, that's really hard. So that's what started the whole project thing. And we started to think about how we can break that barrier like years ago. And gradually we got to this point.
Was it Glenn who had the original idea? Like, how do you at the company get the kind of green light to say we're going to go and the whole team's going to work on something? And also, what are the roles that you give yourself? You know, what does Glenn do and what do you do and what do other people do?
That's a great question. Like when we're on Hydrosynth, Glenn and I do both like working on the specs. Like we work on different modules, different designs. We have discussions and like make decisions together. And for the Leviasynth, I worked a lot on the UI and how the workflow goes. Well, of course, initially Glenn started with the amazing idea of doing the bias controls, and the group added. I think they're like game changing for FM or algorithmic synthesizer. That really speeds up how you operate on the panel. And starting from that point, I was like refining Glenn's idea, putting them into the spec, and like drawing a lot of UI, like trying to make things work. So at a certain point, we decided to use a touchscreen, RGB touchscreen, and we are really aligned that we don't want to be like placing an iPad over there and put everything in it. It's a musical instrument. It has to be inspiring. It should not like show everything on that and like mess with people's brain too much. They need to be at a good balance point that it delivers what you need to know and not get in your way, but still you don't have a very steep learning curve. If you approach it, it like inspires you to start making music.
Yeah.
So for the Leviasynth, it's more like I carried out more in-depth specification writing, and Glenn was really deep in his Synth project. Like
I was going to say, you
also his great passion.
Yeah,
he participated in like sampling sessions and like sharing sessions with artists. That all great stuff. Like there's fun as well. But as you know, we're a small team, so we need to keep moving on. So like from time to time, we have back and forth like discussion on how we move forward. And yeah, on the Leviathan, pretty much I did a lot of spec writing, and for like Ken and Randy, they also participated in that, and Daniel also like helped, and Alex helped a lot in the later sound design, like testing phases of things. And Ken Flux, he obviously has a lot of input. And making such complex products, the challenge is making decisions.
Yeah.
We're like making numerous decisions a day. So that's how it ended up to be like this right now.
How much of it was kind of on paper, and at what point did you start? Do you make software prototypes, or do you start making hardware prototypes where you can start to decide whether the concepts and the ideas that you have for the product are actually going to make sense if you take all the work and carry it through and make them into a real product? So how do you kind of test your ideas early on and go, biasing, how do you know that that's a really good technology and is going to work? And how do you test and check your ideas as you develop them? Because I'm assuming very much you don't end up making a completely finished product and then go, oh, heck, we made wrong decisions early on. You've got to sort of know at each stage that you can carry on. And so how do you do that? How do you make sure that if you're inventing new things and have wacky ideas and concepts, that you know that they're actually going to be good in the final product as you go?
That's a very good question. Like, I think Glenn also mentioned before, no one knows how it's going to end up. We need to imagine how it's going to work. So Glenn and I like to create a 1-to-1 ratio thing on paper and try to imagine how it works on a panel. Right. And for more complex logics, you need to really imagine how it works and write use cases to fit various genres of producers, how they perform, and think in their mindset and make sure that works.
Yeah.
But there are of course times that you thought that's a good idea and end up, wait, that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
But a real challenge is a lot of times is you are drawing on a paper and making decisions without even having the opportunity to try out. Development takes time, and so what we're gonna do is just try our best to make it as feasible as possible to a really final state when we design. Yeah.
How do you have a kind of design rule that's in mind with this? And do you another way of putting that is, how do you decide what not to include? Because I think, I see in, the Hydrasynth and these products, there are tons of things that are fitted into them. And I see that there's scope to add more. And so the question is, did you have a sort of rule that the Leviasynth, what the Leviasynth was not going to be? What is the Leviasynth not going to do? And where are we going to put some artificial or non-artificial boundaries on the product? Because you could easily add and add and add. And I realize that it's seductive, but it can make for a product that's actually not very fun to use. And so how did you decide on those limits and where did you place them?
Indeed. I think Glenn has a really great philosophy that I followed strictly, kind of. What are the 90% of users use the 90% most of the time. So that really solves a lot of questions. Like when you think in that, maybe you pop up with an idea. Hey, that would be fun. But then you think, how many of those people are going to use it? Will it be just a thing that I enjoy using?
Yeah.
Because, when you design instruments, it's really easy for you to get in the hole that you're making a thing for your own self and not for a wider market or various groups of musicians, sound designers, and you need to think in various ways. So not restricting, not limiting, making it flexible, inviting is really important when you make the decisions.
Yeah. I can also jump in here a little bit. So another thing that we didn't want to do is make a modern DX7.
Yeah. It couldn't sound like a DX7 sounds necessarily. Why repeat the past? You
No, exactly. So that's why it's important to make a futuristic and musical instrument that sort of takes you further instead of doing something that just kind of harks back to the good old days.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of. Do you software prototype, Dominic? Is it because when you're saying that, Daniel, it's also you're describing a sound, and you've got to know that you're capable of the final instrument will be capable of doing it. If it's got a sound futuristic, do you make software prototypes in some way? How do you test the sound engine and make sure that you're making something that actually just doesn't sound like anything that exists?
Yeah, we do make software and hardware prototypes, and at some point we merge them. Like we have software working in the hardware,
Right.
and that's where we got to a point that we almost got to cancel this project because we were using the like 2 years ago we were using the old platform that we use on the Hydrasynth Deluxe, and we realized that the processing power is not powerful enough, and we need to cut down features and compromise in quality, and like at to a point that we thought it doesn't make sense. So it's a really hard decision. But at the same time, we're trying to develop a new platform. But developing a new platform is very time consuming and quite challenging for a small team to make it work quickly. So at that point, when we decided to cancel the project, our DSP lead, Bob, said, well, we can maybe move on to using the new platform. Then we were like, hey, if eventually we are gonna need to use a new platform, develop a new platform. So how about just do this project on the new platform and make it feasible? And that's where we moved on. And when we realized that, okay, now we have so much power, then we started to put all the features back in. But yeah, there are interesting things like when we have really limited processing power, I was thinking ways of still delivering inspiring features. Like, okay, we can't do oscillator stereo things. How about doing more interesting voice panning stuff? So I decided to add a panner design so that doesn't strictly tie to voices. So that's a panner that you can limit to a certain number. Sorry, you can limit a number of voices you use, and then they got queued into the panner. And then you have preset panning positions, like interesting patterns. Yeah. So when we moved on to the new platform, hey, that's a plus. I have the old thing, now we have oscillator stereo and more stereo thing to play with, and you can get really crazy. And you can modulate the panning stuff. So yeah, that's how we got from that point to how we are now. But yeah, making prototypes. So back to your question. Yeah, we were like struggling. Like we have the actual hardware prototype and realize, hey, that sounds not quite to our standard. That there's the point we need to make the decisions. But in reality, you would like to have earlier notice about that, but you really like find it at a later phase, and that's hard to move on. But I'm glad that we got to deliver the Leviasynth finally.
Also, the first version did sound like crap. And the decision was like, well, we're not going to deliver a product that sounds like crap.
Yeah.
Which speaks volumes, because there was, developing a product too there's a lot of money involved, there's a lot of time involved. And we just took the decision to go like, well, this is not going to be the product that we release. We need to go back to the drawing board here and find another platform and execute this idea properly.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. So
it's it's the what's the word? I'm on stage. I've now forgotten, but the
dedication.
It's dedication and commitment. No, the sunk cost fallacy. The sunk cost fallacy of we've spent this much money developing a product. We have to plow on, but that takes bravery, and I guess you need a stable financial base, and to be successful, to have that luxury of being okay. We can actually afford not to release a bad product.
Yeah, because there's also of course companies that kind of squeeze out products from old platforms just because they need to squeeze out new products, and not because they really just want to deliver a fantastic product.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's clearly a decision. But I guess, you know, it would be interesting to just talk a bit about the Hydrasynth. And obviously, I assume the Hydrasynth's success is what offers that kind of stable financial base for you to make a grown-up decision and release a really good new product that actually took a lot of money to develop. And I particularly the one thing I want to talk about on the Hydrasynth, because it's interesting to see what is in the Hydrasynth and is also in the Leviasynth. And it feels like one of the key things, from my perspective, is the UI. And it is this, especially this kind of button matrix and the 8 dials. And I've said this before in other videos, but I'll say it to you now, Dominic. Well, we've spoken about this before, but it's, man, like that is the sort of, that's the kind of hidden best feature of the Hydrasynth, in my opinion. And I see it in the Leviasynth. And that's because digital synths, historically, we know, are like programming through a letterbox. You know, you've got this disconnect. It feels very awkward. But what the innovation is that you've got a dedicated button to jump to parts of the voice structure, and it just throws it up on the 8 panel, on the 8 knobs. Another thing I want to say about the knobs is the feel of their the feel of the part is quite resistive and smooth. And as I turn it, I find that the kind of, I don't know if ballistics is the right term, but the amount that I have to turn the endless encoder feels very achievable. It's hard to describe, but I can turn an endless encoder and know what value I'm going to see on the screen after I stop turning it. And that's the kind of invisible thing that people don't realize has actually been a deliberate work. And Dominic and Daniel, I'd like you both to talk about that, both that interface and those kind of invisible decisions that get made that make a thing satisfying to use.
Well, I can quickly start. Obviously, if you've been around synthesizers for a while, you can also see that there are, of course, things in the UI of Hydrasynth and also Leviasynth that some of it's been done before, but ASM has taken it, refined it, and so on. I kind of see it as a bit of a best of as well, getting rid of a lot of this kind of weird UI things and getting kind of straight to the point with UI. And I think that's what talks to the proficiency of using it. It's very sort of, you know, a really good product, you don't even need to read the manual. And for something like Hydrasynth and also Leviasynth, which they're kind of deep instruments, you know, a lot of times you don't even need to open the manual, in my opinion, because the UI is so straightforward, and you kind of go like, oh, of course the function is there, and of course it's here, and it's just kind of, it's very flowy.
Yeah, that is a good word to describe it. Dominic, what do you say to this? How is this done? What do you think about it?
Well, I'm glad that this is appreciated. We put a lot of effort in refining the encoders touching, how it reacts with the values, how the range reacts. We did iterations to make sure that feels right. Like really small things, how the curves, how the velocity curves, keypad curves, how the buttons react, and how it works on, like, when you push down or release to trigger the page opening, like a lot of small things that we make the decisions like along the way. So all end up to deliver an ultimate UX, like that's what the final user experience. And it's a good thing that our small team, everyone is a user as well. We play synths, so we like to exchange ideas and like throw the idea out. Hey, would that be a good idea? And hey, in my workflow that would work well. But if you do this, maybe you can change it like that, and we'll refine the ideas to make it into the design. And it's great that we have experienced synth players who can deliver their opinions accurately.
Yeah.
So we get to gather those opinions and make decisions even better. Like, again, it is really easy to get in the hole to create an instrument only for yourself. But yeah, I mean, we had the experience of playing with other instruments. Some of them that you encountered, you find things that, hey, this is a great instrument, but what if that part puts it over there, and how about you can access that without using shortcuts, and like you'd have those ideas pop up. So these things like got stuck in your head. So when you get the opportunity to create your own instrument, I'm gonna do this right. You know how you want it, how that would work.
Yeah, I think it's interesting hearing you speak to that idea that everyone can communicate it well, because it's another thing to say that something's wrong, but you need to also be able to say it would be right if it worked in exactly this way. And I also have seen how when I'm like in this thing I'm developing is just literally typing out, what something is supposed to be is a challenge. It's a challenge to write something in a way that there's a lot of assumptions that can be made. You understand what you're trying to say, and it really matters because it's the thing that means that everyone is on the same page. And I'm in awe that you're able to do this. And presumably, the other point is you're also working remotely. Glenn is in LA. Daniel, do you live in Los Angeles? Where do you live?
Space.
When you come down to our planet, where do you tend to hang out?
It's also called LA.
Space as well. Yeah. Okay. Fine.
We're spread out.
How does that work? Because because to what I'm saying, where people have to write stuff. Do you have calls? How do you make it work and communicate ideas?
Of course, communication is key, and also the company structure and the sort of order of, I wouldn't say order of commands, but it's very important that every person is, dedicated, but also knows exactly what the person is doing and communicating that. And there's some infrastructure involved.
Do you have a sort of flat structure? One question I had is, does anyone have a power of veto? Is there any one person who's able to say, I love you and that's a cool idea, but no, it's not going in? Is there anyone, and did it get exercised?
It depends on who you ask.
Dominic, what do you say?
I have no idea.
Right, okay. I mean, so what? So everyone is able to suggest features and stuff, and it's kind of. But is there a kind of? How do you agree a consensus? How do you all agree that we're going to do that, even though it's going to be painful?
Well, I mean, Glenn does have the last word, of course, because if he wouldn't be a happy Glenn, and we want to.
I want him to be happy indeed.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
All right, Dominic, can you talk about, the Leviasynth is obviously a massive, massive project, and there's lots of moving parts. What are your favorite, or maybe a better way of putting this is, can you talk about what you think were really successful in terms of the design? What are you like, wow, we really, like, this is interesting, this is different, people should know about this. And can you tell us about what those are, what we should know, and how were they arrived at? How did you come up with them?
Well, there are a few things that I think are really important. This is an algorithmic synthesizer with analog filters. So the analog filters actually determine how it sounds. So when we think of FM synths, people might label it, it sounds cold or tinny or like they have their own mindset already. But merging that with our own designed pre-drive circuitry with that analog filter, you can add saturation to it, and that's what merged them and make the sounds of Leviasynth. So I think it really widened the sound palette well, and it gives a great balance of it. And like even in the digital realm, we have 8 oscillators, so you can do them like subtractive, just use a couple of oscillators, or do additive, like doing simple sine waves and play with harmonics. You can do FM or a few other modes as well, because we doesn't really want to label it as FM synthesizer because it does much more than that.
Yeah.
You can do like phase modulation, linear frequency modulation, pulse width modulation, HTE sync, kind of like hard sync, and 3 types of phase distortion. And each oscillator has its own mode determined. So you can imagine you can have 8 oscillators with all different modes. And for the algorithms part, you have like 144 algorithms presets to choose from. And not just that, you can do morphing, algorithm morphing. So if you're familiar with Hydrasynth, in the Hydrasynth, you can do a wave scan, like smooth scanning between 8 waveforms that you put in the wave list. So on the Leviasynth, you can do algorithm scanning. So morph it between 8 algorithms smoothly. That helps you create very interesting things. And finally, there's the custom mode. So you can actually create 8 very interesting oscillators and then to experiment and build your own custom algorithms. So you can have oscillator 2 modulating oscillator 1, but oscillator 1 also modulating oscillator 8, like in various orders. And imagine each of them has their own modes, and each of them can have their direct output and feedback, and it's a endless experimenting sandbox playground to me as a user. Like, I mean, so much fun to play with.
What am I? I was going to ask very quickly, how on earth do you test this in a way that you ensure that it is reliable? Because in the small experience that I have of a small module that has a few digital modes, even just testing that small little device, a little URAC thing, is a big job. Here, I cannot describe how it's like the Mount Everest of beta testing, because if you have all these modes that you've just described, they all have to be checked in relationship to one another. It's not just, hey, we'll just fire at one oscillator and that will do. You have to test everything with this. And if there's, there must be literally billions of potential. There are billions of potential combinations for sure. So how on earth do you test this so that you deliver a reliable product that people can trust? How is that done?
It's a nightmare for sure.
How can it not be?
I mean, like you said, there's so endless combinations to test. We create cases to test on, and we focus on things that need to be tested when we do iterations. Like, okay, these parts were modified, but one really important way to test it is through real world use cases for us. Like, okay, I put it here. I want to produce whatever genre of music.
Yeah.
Maybe plug in MIDI or play with another groovebox. I want to sync it or play with the Hydrasynth, how it works. Like, if you put them in real world, that's different from like case by case testing.
Yeah. Okay.
But of course, we do both.
Yeah. That makes some sense. So at least you can say, this is actually how people are going to use it. Let's just check those things work first. And then you can, because man, yeah. Do you use sort of, can you, I understand in my limited understanding, I'm not a programmer, that you can kind of have the computer test parts of code. You can sort of, the code can be checked outside of the machine. Do you do that? Does that help? Or is it, do you literally do you have a whole team of beta testers? Who's responsible? How many people do you have doing that?
Well, our engineering team has their own QA testers. So our engineers also use tools like what you mentioned. They have things to check their output as well. And we have a great collection of beta testers as well externally. They're really helpful. Like in our internal QA team, they can cover like case by case things, like more scientifically test things. We test things more musically outside. Well, both actually. Like Ken and I can dig really deep. Like in the midnight, we're discussing the use cases and endless whole like listing all the issues that we can say how to improve or ways that we can well anyway, like we can exchange ideas really instantly, even we have time zone differences, but because we like what we do, we don't really got stopped by the time zone difference.
Well, a question that I meant to ask you before was regarding the voicing. Is you mentioned the analog filter, but we didn't talk about that. Is what is the analog filter, and how did you design, or how did you decide on what style? Because we have a historic legacy of analog filters. How was that decided on, and what is actually in this? Daniel's going.
It's
Go
a
on.
it's a
Daniel.
Oh, don't give me that. You can't. There are no secrets between friends.
we just wanted a really good sounding low pass 4-pole analog filter.
Yeah. Well, I know there's a very popular one. What do you say to it, Dominic?
Same answer.
No comment. Okay, fair. I think I can guess. Do you have bass compensation on this analog filter? Or does it have high resonance, reduces bass?
Oh, it sounds great.
It just sounds great all the time. All right, fine. What about? I mean, have you modified the voicing as you started playing around? Because tell me about what's the way of putting this? Is what was the amount of time between you releasing the Leviasynth and it being in the final form that it is now? How much time was there? And did you change anything big? Was there any, once you had the physicality of the machine worked out, do you have the opportunity to go, man, we should actually just change how something works completely, or change some voicing in the digital component? To what extent did you react to the final instrument? Or did you did it all just sort of come together and you go, here's the final box and the final firmware, and there's nothing else that needs to change? It's brilliant how it is.
I think the most significant timing is when we were thinking about canceling the project, but we brought the new platform back. That's when we decided to put many features back in, and to a point that, again, we dream big and then see what we can deliver in this time frame, and make sense to most of the users. So, there are really no huge changes because that involves mode changes, like hardware changes. Those will be very time consuming. We always want to avoid that, and those cost. So there are small things that we can refine, and in software we can refine. There are buttons, things that we can swap, it fits better if the workflow is like that. We can do small changes, but not huge changes like that. But again, that's the advantage of doing it sort of digitally, that you can upgrade and put more things in them later, or refine things that we think can improve the whole experience later.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world. You add to them. I suppose it's then with the final thing, is there any part of it that people would not realize quite how much work went into it? The parts that look effortless, but were actually the hardest to do?
Wow, a lot. Gain staging, that's a huge thing for the Leviasynth. We have analog filters, we have algorithmic digital engine, so things can get really wild, like one oscillator, one sine wave output versus 8 oscillators, each with really complex waveforms and crazy phase modulation stuff, complex harmonics fed into self-resonating 16 analog filters.
I see your point.
Insane. How are you gonna tame it? How are you gonna deliver that whole experience to users that they don't have to bother about it? They just enjoy using it. That really, we spent months thinking of how we can do the gain staging across every single point.
Yeah.
I mean, we play modulars as well, so those also play a big part in it. So there's I like to balance it. I want to deliver a great flexibility. So people familiar with modulars, they can feel at home. They can I can insert point in that and use the CV/IO, and I can do the modulations and involve other modules to play with that, to interact. And in the Leviasynth, it is possible that you turn initial level on and just leave all the oscillators ringing, and you can do sound like crazy drones and stuff. You can get really deep in that. Again, maybe I can show you the how we did the gain staging thing. Well,
is it automatically changing the gain for you? Is it kind of riding it like an AGC automatic gain control thing?
Well, not really. Well, we have a limiter at the final phase that avoids immediate digital clipping, but because we want to deliver a great flexibility, that's when you don't want auto leveling in it to like mess with you.
Yeah.
Because relatively speaking, when you're like exploring the sound design, hey, why am I getting that weird leveling? That would get in your way. So this gain staging is, hey, why not just create a VCA page that shows you the level in each important phase? So from oscillator output to digital filter output, and then the pre-drive circuitry after that, what you get, and then that got fed into the analog filter. And the analog filter, if you want to like intentionally create the saturation, you can create it.
That's what I was going to say.
Page,
If
you can
had an
like, see
ADC, you can't do that. You want to let the user like F it up. It's so weird.
Yeah.
It's freedom
Yeah.
and responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, it sounds bad. Oh, look at the VCA page. It's clipping hard.
Sounds bad.
Like that.
That's great. Yeah. So, and I suppose then another question, you know, I have only briefly tried this thing, and I'm sure there'll be lots of people that are listening to this that have not had a chance to try this. You know, you've seen it through the whole range, and I suppose a question is like, from your perspective, Dominic, and I'll ask you this as well, Daniel, to give your opinion too, is what is something that doesn't come across in videos? What is something that only comes across when you mess around with this thing?
Like what exactly?
What I mean is there an experiential part of it that is not obvious? It's not a thing that can be necessarily shown in a video or appreciated until you actually have your hands on the instrument. You get to interact with it firsthand yourself.
I think when it like on paper it kind of looks like it's super complex, and for sure it is a complex sound engine, but when you start using it, you realize that the UI is, well, it's fantastic, but it's actually really, really good, and it makes the complexity user friendly, and that's something that you know you can only experience that if you start using it. Obviously, yeah.
So I suppose it's that thing of like with the Hydrasynth buttons and the knobs and stuff. That's kind of what I was getting at, is the fact that that's something on paper. You're like, oh, cool, there's buttons, so you can just hop straight to it. But you're like, when you use it, you're like, oh my god, like this is actually fun. I'm bouncing, I'm flowy, I'm bouncing from this to that to this to that. And I want to point out that I've been able to like use the Hydrasynth and then come away from it for months, but return to it and go, oh yeah, go here to go here to go to here. Yeah. And you just cannot, and you know this, you have a lot of weird esoteric digital synths. That is not true of a lot of synths where you can leave months and come back and understand how to use them again.
Exactly. And I think that the strength of both Hydrasynth and Leviasynth is the fact that they kind of work like old analog synths, where it's like, oh, here's the slider, here's the knob, here's the button, and you kind of go on your way and do things. But again, the UI speaks volume here. Also speaking about Hydrasynth, if Hydrasynth is considered like kind of a deep synthesizer, then the Leviasynth is like an infinite well in comparison. But then when you start using it, it's still like, well, it's not that hard, but you just have like more options and you just have more choices to make. And it's more fun.
Yeah, it's more fun. It's not more confusing. It's just you just got more to do. You got more you can do. Mm-hmm. What do you say, Dominic?
Indeed. Well, there are a few things I think I'd like to bring up, like the bias control. So the bias control is a knob that you can offset a set value to a parameter across all oscillators. So for instance, you can offset the attack. And that's the thing about using FM previously. Like you need to access oscillator 1, like tweak it, oscillator 2, tweak it, and then you got lost. Hey, where am I?
Completely.
Like now you got the bias. I just want that attack to be like slightly longer. I just tweak that bias and it works. So for the level bias control, it is like, in my opinion, is like the golden knob for subtractive, like the filter. It is a golden knob for the algorithmic synthesizer. You tweak it, you get drastic sound changes.
Yeah.
And now you got both. You got a cutoff, analog cutoff, and the envelope level bias really handy to change sounds.
It's like a
Experiment.
hardwired macro in a way,
Yeah.
where it's like a direct
Yes.
control, and that makes the whole kind of obviously the sound engine, those functions for the sound engine is very important, and you can kind of like it's like reaching into the digital core of it, but you're doing it with like just a couple of knobs. Yeah,
One
exactly.
knob. Yeah, completely. All right, so final question is, what are you proudest of, Dominic, with this thing?
Proudest?
Yeah.
Ooh.
As in, what aspect of this are you proudest of? You know, what can you look back at and go, we did a really good job with this? Other than the whole thing, of course, which is evidently true, because it seems like a very good synthesizer.
Well, two things. The sequencer we haven't discussed on. It is a very deep sequencer, actually. And like on the Hydrosynth, we wanted envelope that can work like LFO and LFO that can work like envelope. So now when I think about ARP and sequencer on the Leviasynth, I want sequencer that can be put in arpeggiator, an arpeggiator that creates interesting phrases that can record to sequencer. Like so much things you can play with, and you can modulate sequencer and ARP parameters a lot. And imagine using them with step LFO. I mean, I'm guilty of not having spent much time to enjoy playing on that yet, and I'm sure I'll find so much happy accidents when I play with it. I mean, I enjoy designing it, but I need to spend more time in playing with it and explore more with it. I mean, to this point, even if I turn on Hydrosynth and play, I still find like interesting combinations and happy accidents. So the other thing that I think is rather great is I saw the responses about how the keypad felt, and I was at NAMM. People really appreciated the feel of it. I'm glad that happened, because I spent so much time refining the velocity curve, note on curve, note off curve, aftertouch curve for each curve presets, and we further refined the hardware and redesigned all the curves, like so many iterations. And I'm glad that a lot of people loved how it responds, because in my mindset, if I build such flagship synthesizer, I want it to be worth to be placed in the center of the studio, like a master keyboard that can play synths well, play piano libraries well. So hopefully that delivers.
I think so. And we'll let people try it themselves. It's here at the show. Dominic, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us late at night, I think.
Thank you, Alex.
I want to say thank you, and thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Woo!